So, welcome back to Artisans Alley. We're here at the Vernon Community Arts Centre with Daniel Stark, local musician and artist extraordinaire and one of my heroes. Tell us what you're doing when you pinch a bowl.
Yeah, okay, I'm just going round and round. You wedge it all up. There's something funny about pinching. People always want to bypass it and get into the equipment, the wheels.
Yeah, go right onto the wheel.
And then you get on the wheel and you make a pot, and it looks a bit lathe-turned. It looks like you're more in a woodworking class.
But your first 20 look like ashtrays.
Yeah, my first one looked like a little breast.
Oh, right.
I was in grade 10. I made one and I glazed it pink with a red top, and when we opened the kiln, my art teacher and I had a great laugh. Ball of clay, thumb, fingers. The funny thing about pinching a pot, little pinches. And it's all about touch. I'm just going round, round, slight pinch, slight. It's like a wheel. Look, I'm a wheel.
It's the original wheel.
I'm the real wheel. I'm the real deal. You're doing essentially what a wheel does. You're just going round and round.
But you're doing it very gradually, I see.
Some people, have a hole in the ground and they go round and round. And
oh, do you have a hole in your board?
No, not yet. I just go round and round.
If you do it for another century, you will.
Yeah. And as you go, your fingers push it where you want it to be pushed.
It's quite relaxing,
and that's
isn't
the
it?
funny thing about it is, what you're doing then is what you want to do. I mean, you're in charge. Your fingers are saying, squeeze or not.
Yeah.
So it's your fingers that are doing it. And so when you get the pot after and look at it half a year later, it's a strange intimacy to it that just actually puzzles me. Like, I don't remember making it.
Consciously,
in the bath.
that one was November 30th.
I don't remember exactly.
I love how unique
much
they are.
about it. And every surface of it, every aspect of this surface was touched by me, and therefore it feels extremely intimate to me. It's the funniest thing. I just keep looking at it and go. And then it was fun to relinquish the decorating to Roberta.
And she loved it.
Yeah. And
and you decorated with
iron oxide.
Iron oxides painted on the surface.
Yeah, just a mixture of iron oxide, and she's a great brush painter, and so she had fun, and I had fun, and the result is
and a great firing.
Yeah. It was the first firing of my new soda kiln.
Is that up the mountain too?
It's up the mountain. My cabin I'm trying to make it kind of like a retreat center for people to go to make pots, make art, and meditate, or write poetry, or I don't know,
Yeah.
You just go round and round. I just love it. I don't teach anymore. I never really did teach. Years ago maybe, but there were some kids from a local school that came over, and sometimes I go to school and make pots with kids, but I'm not doing that so much.
And then you're just smoothing over the rough bits?
Yeah, if you got a rough bit that you don't like, you smooth it over.
And you've got all kinds of texturing stamps that you've made over there. So at what point do you texture them?
At the end, I suppose.
When it's still soft,
yeah,
but maybe a little bit firmer?
I love collecting texturing stamps. I don't know, I just love texture, and I like the modern detritus of our world, so my shop is filled with detritus.
I love your shop.
Bits and pieces of everything. Leaves, sunflowers from the garden, pine things, carved jade, goddesses.
Is that the one that's a sunflower from your garden?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is sunflower from the garden. Bits of styrofoam cups, recycling arrows. Bought these in Vancouver, little goddess stamps for cookies, I suppose. I have a 17th, 16th, or 17th century pastry stamp from Korea that I use on some of my. This is a stamp apparently from a 17th century. I don't know if it was 16th or 17th, but it's a pastry stamp, cookie stamp, cookie. So
Korean cookies.
yeah,
bet
so
they're
I just
pretty.
like collecting things. Here's a, this one says Moose Mountain Fire Lookout in old, and then you can make the stamps, and this is clay that I've been fired once at a low temperature, so it's porous. So when you stick it onto wet clay, it does not stick to the clay.
Oh,
So I could try a bit harder, but you could get a stamp that says Moose Mountain Lookout. I took an old typewriter set apart, and I have an alphabet of an old typewriter. And this is a stamp from the, this is a stamp copied from a rubber stamp from the Vernon Fruit Union. I got a box of rubber stamps, and this one says bicycle and rider. So for a while, I stamped my pots with something that said bicycle and rider.
which is how they delivered stuff, or what?
I don't know, but I think so.
must be, right?
I think so, yeah.
Like
I
delivered
think
by
so.
truck, delivered by bicycle and
Yeah,
rider?
yeah.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah, I know. So I got all these stamps, peaches, blueberries. But there's this, so you can make stamps if you like. Stamping's fun. Some of them are abstract radio dial knobs. They're almost like, kind of like,
Vintage. Oh, yeah.
just kind of like
Almost steampunk.
mandalas, steampunk mandalas. Yeah. So I was gonna make some bowls that do not have feet.
Because?
I thought it'd be fun to make some that looked like mountains.
Oh. Or breasts, which is where you
or
started.
breasts.
Bringing it all back to the beginning.
I was going to make a bunch of breasts. I've kidded with my studio friend. I was thinking of making a lot of breasts and maybe fundraising for benefits.
Breast cancer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a cause close to both our hearts.
Yes. So, breasts, mountains that look like breasts,
Breasts that look like mountains.
fire lookouts.
Yeah.
Plus,
Monoliths.
often you put your pots upside down on a shelf when you live in the woods because you don't want mouse poop in them anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Or if you're not a good housekeeper.
or maybe you want to make a covered
But it would be
jar.
it would be a little tippy though, wouldn't it?
Tippy,
as a
tippy, yes. This is in Japan, for instance. They sometimes make little sake cups that have no bottom. They're pointed, and the tradition there is you never put your cup down because if you do, they fill it. So maybe if you don't want to drink too much, you have a cup that
You
you
just
can't
keep
put
holding
down, and they keep filling it anyway. I think.
Okay, so now you've done some stamping on that. If you wanted to do surface decoration like Pix did,
Yes.
at what point do you add the oxides?
Well, technically, there's two firings often in pottery.
The bisque firing?
If you're wood firing and you're getting enough wood ash, that can seal the clay and you can use it. But people often put a glaze on inside. Now, glaze is kind of like a ground up rocks and minerals mixed with water to the thickness of heavy cream. If this pot was dry and I was to put glaze in it, it would just fall apart into mud again. So what we do is we fire it once at a low temperature and it comes out porous.
Mm-hmm.
You lick
So
it,
it's
the
a
wet
bisque
spot goes
firing.
away. So that
It's
you
not
can-
vitrified yet.
it's not vitrified. You can dip that in clay, and it's like a red clay flower pot. It will soak up the juice, and the powder will stay on it. Then you can take that, put that in the kiln, and fire for the second higher firing that causes the glaze to be melted. So you can, now, you can brush decorate before bisquing or after. You could brush decorate on just raw clay, even wet
When it's
clay.
kind of leather hard is
Yeah.
better than green?
I would do
Cold
it on
wet?
green if you wanted.
Okay.
You can do that if you like. You can also texture raw clay. You could, you could texture a piece of raw clay, and when it's dry, you could take an oxide, which is basically thin brown water, and you could paint that on, let it dry, and then with a little sponge, you could just lightly rub it off, and the texture, when you fire it, will be melted right in.
Into the indentation, so it's
So,
darker where your design
Yeah.
is.
So you can brush decorate if you want on raw ware. But most people bisque fire in an electric kiln and then take their time glazing. And if they make a mistake, you can wash it off. And the pot will not turn back into a mud puddle.
Nice.
Whereas this, I'm not worried about these things. When it dries, I can add water and it turns back into clay again, like it's been doing for centuries.
How long does it take to dry before you can fire it in the kiln for the first firing?
Oh, it depends, a few days. You want to dry things kind of slowly and evenly, or you risk cracking. It depends on the humidity in the air and stuff like that. Because something, my little bit of mathematical involvement for kids, conceptual. Clay shrinks.
Indeed.
Clay is made out of small particles that are like flat, like a deck of cards. And if you take a deck of cards and throw them on the floor and put water on, and try to pick them up, you realize they all stick together. When the water goes away, the cards go closer together. So it's always fun for kids. I don't know if it's fun.
Sometimes it's disappointing.
But I say, listen, kids, take a roll of clay, take a ruler, and mark on 10 centimeters. Mark a line 10 centimeters big. And then when you fire that, you'll notice when you measure it again, you'll see that it's 9.2 centimeters. Well, that's
On this clay, shrinks that much.
every clay shrinks differently.
Yeah.
Porcelain shrinks a lot, and those red clay flower pots that you see from China sometimes, that shrinks incredibly amount, like 20, 25%. It's like really shrinks. Other clays don't shrink so much, but it's fun. You can measure the shrinkage, and then you can go, oh, da-da-da. And I've developed a little funny other thing that I do. I go to a copy machine with a fired piece, put it on the copy machine, copy at this percentage, that percentage, until it's back, the copy is back at 10 centimeters again. Then I go, oh, look, it's 113%. So I can make a ruler,
Yeah.
113%,
Yes.
copy a ruler, and that ruler is then you can use that ruler
With that body of clay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
like our friend up on the mountain wanted me to make him a bread lid. Al Scott made him a bread jar and the lid broke. Well, to make the lid to fit the 10-inch lid is a bit of a problem unless you can really say that, well, I know my clay shrinks that, so I'm gonna, and then you measure. So that's a little something I do with
I was
kids.
making fermentation crocks and
Yes.
trying to make, after you make it, to
Yeah.
make the lids that would fit are very challenging. Well, that's extremely cool. But besides all of this wonderful clay stuff that you do, you're also a musician, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And I think you've made a musical instrument back
Brought an
here, haven't
instrument.
you?
Brought an instrument.
What do you call it?
Udu drum.
An udu drum.
Yeah, UDU.
It's absolutely stunning. I love the look of this.
This is from my recent soda firing. And
It's not light.
I don't make things light too often. A lot of people like to make things light, which is all fine.
Isn't it beautiful though?
But I tend
My
to
word.
make things a bit on the heavy side. This is the effect of wood ash melting on the pot. This is some seashells. I had some big kind of clammy seashells sitting here. So it was sitting on them like that. And I suppose that the fire was coming from this side. So it hit here and then came over here and hit here. A lot of ash, soda, and wood ash melted there.
Is that apple again?
No, this kiln I just fired with scrap stuff from a lot of log buildings in Lumbee.
Oh, okay.
There used to be builders out there, and they had mountains of the wood that they cut when they make log homes. And so this is an udu drum. In Nigeria, they play it. The larger the volume, the lower the note. This note is right in around C, which is just perfect for the instrument that I play, which is all my music that I play is in a drone of C or B. So I play music that's like drone music, kind of. So this is tabla drums in India. A lot of people think this sounds like a tabla drum because tabla drums are tuned to notes. And Udu drum is actually in a lot of modern pop music. You
It's
hear
a beautiful sound.
Years ago, I used to make drums and with hides and animal hides. And I had a woman come once and ask if I could make a vegetarian drum. And early 90s, I'm like, I didn't know at that time. But this is a vegetarian drum.
Vegan even.
Yeah. The skin is mine.
And is it often played on a basketry bass?
No.
Or do you wear it up,
this
put
is
it on
just-
your lap?
Just
or-
some vines from the yard.
Cool.
It's nice to have.
I like it.
They usually don't fire them so high. They're usually burnished and pit fired.
Is this
black.
this clay?
No, this is Laguna
Stoneware?
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got a few of these.
Was that a pinch pot? Or did it start
No,
coils? Or?
it's actually very easy to make this. I have made a mold cast from a ball. So I just take a slab of clay and quickly slab it on the mold and whack it on the mold and then cut it off and set it aside and make another one and then put the two together and make the seam and then put this on. It's actually, I make it in a day. I did burnish it after for a smoothness effect.
What do you use when you're burnishing?
A stone or a spoon or something.
Which
Can't
makes
remember.
the outer side very
Yeah.
smooth and it compresses the
It's a
clay
funny
body.
thing with clay. As a clay is almost dry, drier than this, you can take a smooth thing like a spoon or a very smooth pebble and you can polish it and it will go like glass. And the Anasazi Indians and a lot of that New Mexico pottery, they use that and they don't fire so high. They burnish things. And it can, okay, it's probably 12th century food safe, you know. It's not like us these days. You know.
Or the average lifespan was 32 or something.
Yeah, I think they used to, I don't know if anybody ever, who knows, right? But
Yeah.
maybe that's why
Oops,
they
sorry.
don't exist anymore. But
That's where they went.
I don't think so. I think they would seal the pots with something, I think.
Now, you've also used a gas kiln, right?
Yeah.
Do you have one?
I do not have a
Really?
gas kiln. I bought a gas kiln, and I was hoping to use it. I used it a few times. In my early days when I apprenticed in Calgary with Neil Liskey, I learned with a gas kiln, yeah. But I didn't fire that much. I had one at the cabin on the Silver Star. I don't have gas.
Okay.
And propane is quite expensive. And
And needs
just,
to be physically manhandled up there if you don't have it.
yeah, you could get a big tank delivered and all that stuff, but Leonard Epp always just kind of laughed and went, it's just so expensive, man.
Yeah.
And he started using air dry clay. And he just painted with acrylics.
Did he really?
He did.
Wow.
In his later years, he just went, yeah, why
Another
bother?
great
Why
local
bother
father.
firing it? You know, just,
You let go of things as you get
Yeah.
older, hey?
and yeah.
And now you've got a book here about cave art.
Yeah.
How has that influenced your decoration
Well, just lately,
philosophy?
a year ago, I started reading up on it, and I just fascinated with it. And on Facebook, there's somebody I follow and read articles by. She's a paleoarchaeologist out at University of Victoria. But if you've ever seen movies of these, it's utterly fascinating.
And all natural pigments.
All natural pigments. And there's a TED Talk where she talks about ochre and human consciousness, like how they learn to take natural pigments and cook them just the right amount to get different colors. Like this is about 40,000 years ago, and there's a rock in this cave with a bear skull placed on it. Like
Oh, my
on it. You know, the bear didn't die there, right? And around it are like burnt, they think maybe like burnt offerings or something. They don't even know.
No, it's all theorizing. But very, very stylized and very clear about what they are. It's easily recognizable.
They know one guy did all the horses. And they look, there's some prints in here of walls where there's handprints. Handprints. The one woman in Victoria, her main research is on not the pictorial drawings, but the lines. There's about 28 different markings that are around the world appearing, and they're just almost like universal. And nobody knows exactly what they mean. There's the zigzags and some straight lines, and there's handprints. And they can measure handprints. People on the wall would place their hand on the wall and spray ochre around them and then take their hand away, or they dip their hand in ochre and slap it on the wall. And they can look at these handprints and go, well, the people were this high, and these are women. They measure a finger length difference, and women are a bit different than men, so they can tell. And then there's places where kids can go and play. There's or where kids run shoulders, and so I am going to try to. I was going to do it with my pinch pots that Roberta decorated, but I started making little hands because I'm going to next time around. I was going to put them on my pots and try to spray handprints.
With one of those mouth spray things?
Yes, and actually in these caves, more recently, they found broken bird bone. You take a bird bone and break it just so, and when you blow on the end of it, it sucks the juice up and sprays it on the pot. It's an aspirator. So they had like their own spray bottles.
And the timeline of these, they figure, is
40,000 years.
40,000 years ago.
And then another aspect to this, which is really fascinating to me, Werner Herzog made a movie. He's a movie maker. And he made a movie in Chauvet Cave. And he said what was fascinating to him, the cave paintings, the walls of the caves are not flat like a canvas. And so when they draw an animal, they'll use the shape of the cave wall to mimic the animal. But then he said, and the other thing is, they don't always just have two pairs of legs. Sometimes they have multiple legs. And he says, as a filmmaker, I think he felt that these people were the first filmmakers because they understood that when light flickered, the animals looked like moving.
They're moving.
They look like they're moving.
Yeah, so you see multiple sets of legs.
Yeah, and I've been kind of researching light from different aspects, and more recently I purchased some LED lights that flicker like torches, and I use them at night in my music studio. Things move in the room, right?
Yeah, from vibrations.
Yeah, well, the light moves, and so your shadow of your cello like moves on the wall. Things dance in the firelight. Well, we've forgotten this. Like if you go, any picture in this book was taken with a flash. These lights are not flashing.
Oh, right.
So you think you're seeing the cave paintings, you're not seeing what they saw.
Right.
I mean, you have to really, are not seeing.
Their light had motion.
Because light is what people see.
And you were looking at it, it's
light is what the world is light. And if you want to see what they saw more accurately, you need flickering light. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting really interested in flickering light.
You're a man of many interests, my friend.
Yeah, the flickering light thing's very fascinating. And like modern times with the computers, people, you need to turn the blue light to red at night to go to sleep because the brain needs to sleep. And other researchers say, reason maybe TV became so popular and addictive is because it's like flickering firelight. And we're all tuned into looking at flickering. We like flickering lights. And it stirs the creativity and the imagination to have flickering lights. So my latest thing is I'm thinking about light. And I had thought actually prior to Roberta doing the show was kind of cave painting on pots and having the show with flickering lights, in an art gallery. Because usually you go in art galleries like as bright as you can get.
And extra spotlights on the individual pieces
They
of
don't
art.
flicker. Mm-hmm. So I had thought it'd be fun to do a flickering light show. And the nearest thing I can do with that is the fireplace channel.
The guy with the plaid
amazingly
shirts?
popular. Why is
right?
that so popular? People like flickering light.
They do. Isn't that funny?
I made a movie once in front of my wood stove, which had a glass window, and it flickered light on a fold-up book I used, and I made just a video of it. But it was really, really fun. And I thought, how can I replicate that? Because I don't have a wood stove now.
Right.
I'll just have to use a fireplace channel.
Well, it's coming up pretty quick here.
Yeah, I know. I saw that today.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for coming and talking with me and showing us some of what you do. You're an absolutely amazing human being and a fabulous talent, and I'm really grateful that you came today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So
Glad to
thank
be
you so
here.
much for watching us here on Artisans Alley. Please come and see us again
Go out and paint some caves.
with flickering
Not
lights.
spray paint. Don't use spray paint.
No
I
spray
didn't.
paint.
I did not say that.
No.